Hi everyone, it's Christy from Green Eyed Tarot. Today I'm here to film my April capsule card collection. So for those of you who don't know what the capsule card collection is, Tara is Cozy and Kelsey from Huga Tarot started this initiative where they choose a theme for the month, and then based on that theme, they choose a capsule collection, so a smallish group of decks to use for that month that resonates with them related to the theme. So I will link both of their channels in the description box so that you can check out the January. I believe they started in January. I think I'm correct about that. I believe they started in January. But this is a great idea. I love the structure of this for those of us who may struggle with a larger or having a large amount of decks and being able to use them and get to use them throughout the entire year. I hate that some of them sit on my shelf and don't get used. So I feel like this is a great way to ensure that I'm using the decks that I have, and also may help me consider rehoming decks if I'm really not reaching for them, if they're not resonating with me for any of these themes. So we'll see how it goes for the rest of the year. I can tell you for March, I was an epic failure for me. So I had every intention of using the decks that I chose for March. And I did use them for maybe like the first week and a half. But then I sort of totally fell off with those, and I became obsessed with using other decks for some reason. So there were other decks, and I feel like that's going to happen. And there's no rules to this. It really is whatever works for you is my feeling. So while I'm saying that I was an epic failure, it really is not that big of a deal, because in the end, it's whatever decks that we want to use. So it's nothing against the decks that I chose for March. I did use the Magical Nature Tarot pretty regularly, but that was the only one. Like the other decks, they just didn't, I don't know, I was getting nothing from them, and it's not like I'm never going to use them again. It was just at this moment. So I'm going to show you what I was obsessed with instead. So for some reason, there were two decks that actually it's three decks, but one of them is actually one of my decks for April. So I'll save that one. But there were two decks that I was like using throughout the whole month of March instead of my actual capsule cards that I chose. So I'm going to share those with you right now. And then we'll get to the April capsule cards. And these, I'm pretty confident that I'm going to use the ones that I actually chose for April, because they're really resonating with me right now, but we'll see. That can change, and that's okay. I'm going to try to stick to it though. So anyway, so March, I became obsessed with using this Golden Botticelli tarot deck. I don't know why. It's hard to say like why this came up all of a sudden for me. And this is, it is a mass market deck. It's a low Scarabeo, I believe. Yeah, it's a low Scarabeo deck. So this is the Golden Botticelli. And like I said, I honestly have no idea why it just struck me, and I pulled it out and I started using it, and I couldn't put it down. So, it's very beautiful. It's very, as you can see, it's based off of Botticelli's art. So it's called the Golden Botticelli Tarot. It is mass market. I'm pretty sure it's readily available still. I'm pretty sure that you can get this it's pretty readily available. Golden Botticelli Tarot. So like I said, it's based on the artwork of Sandro Botticelli. And it's beautiful. And I love I don't know that I ever realized the gold accents are just popping. Like I said, I couldn't tell you why this became like a deck that I was reaching for and I wanted to use throughout the month of March. It's kind of bizarre. It does have kind of religious undertones because of the artwork, just because of the theme the themes of the artwork. Oh my God, I love this devil card. Look at this. It's like a fawn. It's like Pan. I love it. So it does, it does have kind of religious because of just the themes of obviously the artwork. Look at this Queen of Cups. But it's just beautiful. I love the faces, like the faces in so many of the, like they're so melancholy. And I'm not saying that that's why I was drawn to use this in March. To me, March is such a nebulous month. It's like freezing here. We had 2 days where it was like 65 degrees and then it was back down and then it poured rain for like days. We had like 3 days of rain and then we had an earthquake like randomly on Friday. So I don't know. It's just been, March was a weird month. And to me, this deck is like, everybody in this deck, like all of the facial expressions are kind of like, what is happening? Like, where are we? It's like this weird nebulous like time. And I feel like everybody in this deck looks the same way. They look like, I have no idea what's going on. And that's just kind of how I felt. Like, even with the decks that I chose for March, I was like, what is going on? Like, I don't want to use these decks. Like, I have no idea why. I literally have no idea what was happening in my brain. I mean, that happens a lot, but I just was drawn to use this deck. We'll just leave it at that. But like I said, I feel like this just, I don't know, the imagery, like it mirrors my just like not understanding what's happening. Like just things that are happening in the world and like the eclipse that's happening. Like people are like flipping out about, I don't know. There's just been so much talk about it. And about like safety related to it. And then like people, they were giving out the glasses at like libraries, but like libraries ran out and people are like flipping out on like the library staff. Like it's just been a month of like just very weird things, like weird vibes in general. I mean, not for me in personally necessarily, just as an observer of like things that are happening. And then, like I said, we had a random like earthquake on Friday that was like in Jersey, but like at work, literally, we thought our building was coming down. It was, and like we may be dramatic. Listen, we're New Yorkers. We don't get earthquakes very often. So maybe we were being dramatic, but it was really like a little bit disconcerting. Like when our entire building was like pulsating. And like the building that I work in is not like, it's like kind of old and it's pretty, I don't know, it's been there a long time and they haven't really made many updates to it. And I just feel like it's going to collapse. Like if it's going to be, that's going to be the one that's going to fall. Like if we have an earthquake. So like, look at this, the Six of Cups, right? Is like nostalgia, but like, does this little baby, like young little person look like he's like being nostalgic? He looks like he's like constipated. So I don't know. He just has this look of like, I mean, maybe he's thinking about the past, but like he kind of has the look of like, what? Like, what's going on? So that's where we are. Look, everyone is just confused in this deck. And it's, I don't know, it was like giving me something this month, or I should say last month in March. Like everyone just looks so confused and like tired and like not really sure what's going on. Like look at this, look at this one on the bottom in the Two of Pentacles. Like this one's sitting on, and the one on the bottom is just like, what's happening? Like, why are you sitting on me? So I just feel like everyone looks very like lost and confused. And that's sort of how I felt in the month of March. Look, here we go. Look at the Queen of Wands. Like, I don't know. It's, the more I look at it, I'm like, the more I just love how confused everyone is and like apathetic they are. And I don't know, that's just did something for me in the month of March. And it's a beautiful deck. I love this. That's classic. The World. That's a classic image. I feel like I've been seeing this everywhere too. A lot of people talking about Venus and different iterations of Venus. I don't know. I feel like I've been hearing about it too, like a lot. So that could be why. It could have been like subliminal in my brain. Like I was like, where have I seen that image? Like, oh yeah, on the box, the Golden Botticelli. Anyway, so that's my rant about the Golden Botticelli Tarot, but I don't know. If you have this deck, I would love to hear what you feel about the confusion on everyone's faces. It's just, I feel like this is a great deck for when I'm feeling nebulous and confused and have no idea, you know, what's going on in my brain and the world around me. So Golden Botticelli, was totally obsessed. The other deck that I was completely obsessed with in March was the Noisy Museum Tarot. This is a great deck. This is by LA Green Witch. She's LA Green Witch on... They are LA Green Witch on Instagram. They have a few decks, I believe. And so this is the Noisy Museum. And this is another one that's filled with amazing art, like pre-existing art, but then layered in a collage with all different things too. So pieces of the art have been taken out. I love it. This is one of my favorite paintings, The Tempest by John William Waterhouse. Love it. Amazing. So I love that pre-Raphaelite art. I don't know. I'm in my art phase. I'm in my high art phase. But then again, I'm using the Golden Botticelli and just picking apart about how everyone looks apathetic and confused. So I'm definitely no art critic, but I do love this deck. And I love the name of it, the Noisy Museum. It definitely puts me in the feels of being in an art museum, and art museums are someplace I'd love to go. And I always often talk about how the Met, which is one of the biggest art museums in the world, is how quiet it can be. Like there are corners of that place and it could be like so packed, and there are corners of that place that are so quiet. But then there's so much of the city, like New York in itself, that's just so busy and noisy. I mean, like it just is. So I love that sort of that dichotomy. And this deck, I just like the idea of a noisy museum. And like, I think that kind of relates too to some of the art, because it's more than just one piece of art. It's like pieces layered on top in collage. So I do love it. I think it's really nice. Like, I just think this is a really nice deck. It was nicely done. And I've just been really enjoying it. Like, I love this for the 10 of Swords. Like, you can feel that. There's not necessarily swords. It's just like these lines, but you just feel it. And I love the collage, like the ripped look. It looks like a junk journal, right? Like it looks like this is like a deck of someone's junk journal with all the pages that have been ripped. And I've been kind of enjoying that myself, like in doing journaling. I've just been enjoying like ripping paper and like doing layers and things that I never did before. I've been really enjoying just ripping and like using an X-Acto knife and cutting like really like jagged edges on stuff to layer into my journals and things. So this is, I kind of like the way it looks cut out. It reminds me of like when we were given magazines when we were younger. Remember like going to school or like having a project and it was like, you have to go through and cut out photos, like pictures in this magazine or like words in the magazine. And like, I loved doing that as a kid. And like when we had to do that, and that's sort of what this reminds me of, is like, here's a theme, or like, you know, you're cutting out photos for this project that you have to do. And it's based on, you know, like you have to find photos. And like, I think that's great. And I feel like that's kind of what this is like, okay, here's the tarot deck. Here's each tarot card, you know, let's find images, you know, that relate to the, you know, each card and art, existing artwork, and just layer it. I just think it's genius. Like I could never do something like this. I don't think I have the creative capacity. So I love when people do stuff like this, but to me, this is a great deck. And like I said, I kind of became obsessed with it this month, and I don't know, it's just hitting. I love this star card. Looks like a pentacle almost that was drawn, and then again like the rips and like the tears down here. So yeah, so it just hit me. It hit me in the right way this month, and I've been really enjoying it. So the Noisy Museum, that's the other one that instead of using the decks I chose for March, these were ones that I ended up using more often than not throughout the month of March. Okay, so enough about March. April. We're in April, and the theme for April is grounding roots. I believe I got that right. It was definitely about roots and grounding roots. So in thinking about this theme, I definitely went more towards the roots aspect of it, because I feel like for March, I picked decks that were more grounding to me. So I think I'm leaning more into the roots aspect of this theme. So, but what I did was I picked 5 tarot decks and didn't really think much about Oracle. I thought more about the tarot decks. And what I did was I really thought about my roots and like meaning my own roots, not just like my ancestral roots, but like my roots as I've gone through my life, like everything that's made me who I am today. So I picked a deck sort of for each era of my life. So a one that to me speaks to my childhood and when I was a child, and one that speaks to more my teenage years, like teenage young adult, like 20s type energy. And then I picked one that that really encapsulated sort of my late 30s, early 40s, which is a very difficult time for me. So I picked one that encapsulated that. So number 4 was one that brought me back to tarot after a break. So the deck that sort of brought me back into tarot and kind of brought me back to myself in a way. And then I have the deck for today, like me now and like where I feel like I am now and just the path that I'm on and something that embodies me now. And so I feel like my roots are all of those things that made me who I am and like got me where I am today. So that was my thinking for this. So the first deck for April that I'll be using and that will start from when I was a child. So the deck that just really embodies my childhood is the Anne of Green Gables Tarot. So if anyone, Anne of Green Gables is a book, obviously, first by L.M. Montgomery. And I did read Anne of Green Gables when I was a child, when I was younger. I read like the original Anne of Green Gables, but then I was also introduced to the Anne of Green Gables series that was, I believe, 1985, which really just solidified my absolute love of Anne Shirley and her entire world. And so it became like such a part of my life. And I'm pretty sure I've talked about this before on the channel about just, I would like stay home sick from school and like that would be what I would watch, or like if it was like a cold snowy day, that would be what I would watch. And that has continued into adulthood. Like I have continued that practice of watching, and every once in a while it'll be like cold and snowy, I like will be home or be just nasty out, or just I'm just home doing nothing, one of those days where I'm like literally just giving myself a break. And then Anne of Green Gables will go on. I have them on DVD now. I had them on VHS. Now I have them on DVD, the whole sets, Anne of Green Gables, Anne of Avonlea, and the continuing story. Like it just goes on and I just absolutely adore it. So this deck just literally every single scene puts me right back to that series from 1985 and just the feeling of me, you know, being a child. I was, to me, I feel like I definitely was like not like other kids in terms of my like obsession with things like this. I did a lot of pretend play when I was a kid. Like all I did was like pretend play. Like everything I did pretty much revolved around me pretending to be or like be someone else or just pretend play. So of course I would like act out Anne of Green Gables. But I would act out lots of other things too. And like, I was always doing that, engaged in that type of play. And I feel like that's something that's missing right now from young kids today because of the age of technology that we're in. It's just, I feel like that's something that we need to really hold on to and really boost up in children, is that imaginative play. And I work in the field of early childhood, specifically infants and toddlers, and infant toddler development and infant toddler mental health is the field that I work in. So it's something very close to my heart. And so I just am so thankful that I grew up when I did, because I don't know that I would have had that exposure to imaginative play. And for anyone who doesn't know Anne of Green Gables or has never seen, you know, the series or any sort of iteration of Anne of Green Gables, she's also, she's obsessed with reading and poetry, especially like romantic poetry. And so she's the reason why I became obsessed with Tennyson and his poetry. And so because of her, I started reciting Tennyson, and specifically the Lady of Shalott is the one that she's right at the beginning. The series opens with her wandering through the woods and she's reading the Lady of Shalott. And so, this really sort of like, that was like my segue into becoming obsessed with like Tennyson. And I don't know a lot of like 8, 9, 10-year-old kids who are obsessed with the Lady of Shalott and reciting that poetry and like acting it out. I don't know. So to me, it was definitely different. I was definitely like, different in that way. I loved reading. I still do. But when I was a kid, man, I just devoured books. Like I just read and read and read. And it's something that I did so much. And I'm just so grateful that I had that, time and space to be able to do that. But yeah, so this is just, it brings me right to the heart of like when I was a kid and brings back so much for me. This deck it means so much to me for that span. And Anne of Green Gables, like it played such a huge part in me growing up and as a child. So this deck to me is like my roots. Again, it's like that roots of my childhood, has made me who I am today. It's why I'm still obsessed with, this. And after all these years, this is still my comfort. Like when I don't feel well, when I'm feeling down, like I watch, and I still like it, all the parts. Like when Matthew dies, like I cry like hysterically, just those parts of the movie that are like the sadder parts, even like the parts where, that may be happy or, that, like the homecoming, like when Anne comes home after being away, or when Anne is leaving to go off to like Queens to college and she's moving far away and she's not going to see Marilla. It's just like, it just gets me like every single time. And I've seen it like 1,000 times. Oh, there's Matthew. He's the temperance card. It's like one of my favorite temperance cards ever. Just that he's such a balance. Like he's such a solid, like the stone that he's standing on, he's such a solid like presence, and he's so balanced. Like he has such a balanced temperament, and he's like, he like loves with all of his heart, but he's practical and logical in some ways, but he isn't in other ways. He's just this wonderful like balance. And I just think this is such a great choice. But just the entire, this entire world, really, it played such a big part. So that's the Anne of Green Gables tarot. There's Anne and Diana Barry, her best friend. So yeah, so there's a lot of special moments in here. Oh, there's Gilbert Blythe. Right? She didn't think that she could love him. She needed someone more romantic, right? Who would read poetry by firelight, who'd recite Tennyson and read, like Lord Byron's like poetry and just, and be like so romantic. But Gilbert was like the solid, friend first, but always sort of adored her. And so she was just so torn because she thought she had this idea of what love was supposed to be. And these ideals, she had these really romantic ideals, right? From reading all this poetry and all this, she just had this idea of what that love, this great love should be like, when a great love can be, it doesn't have to be like clashing cymbals and fireworks, it could be like just that slow burn, that hearth fire, that home that you come home to. So it's just such a beautiful story. And again, I feel like she shaped so much of me and taught me so much about things like love and what that really is, and home and how you find your home, and how you connect with people. So it definitely made me who I am. It's a big part of my childhood, and just it encapsulates that warm feeling I have from being a kid, because I was super lucky in my family, and yeah, I was blessed. I had a blessed childhood, and I was super lucky with my parents and my family, and just what they nurtured in me, was always something that was so important. And my love of Anne of Green Gables was definitely one that, I'm sure they were sick of hearing about at some point in my time as a kid. So that's the roots deck for when I was a child. So moving into my teenage years and like early 20s, the Lonely Dreamer Tarot is the one that I picked. And this one, I picked this because I wasn't necessarily lonely as a teenager. I had friends. I was involved in things in school. So I wasn't necessarily lonely. I think there's a big difference between being lonely and like feeling like you might be alone. So I just like to preface that with I wasn't like lonely necessarily or alone necessarily. Like I said, I had a loving family, but I think I just felt like I've always sort of had that feeling. And I think a lot of people have this feeling, that they like were born in like a different time, like they were born in the wrong time. And like over the years, I've kind of found out that sometimes that's like your connection to past lives. I do believe in that. I believe in past lives. So just like that you're holding on to it, or that it's followed you through lifetimes. And so I've always sort of felt a little bit like I belong somewhere else. Like I should have been born in a different time period, and I'm sort of out of time. And I definitely felt that as a young adult, as a teenager. This is when I became interested in paganism, and I really started to question like my Catholic upbringing and the Catholic faith. And to me, this deck sort of embodies some of that. Like to me, some of the imagery is very religious, sort of. And if anyone doesn't know, this is the second edition of The Lonely Dreamer. The Lonely Dreamer is based on artwork. Again, an artist. I always pronounce this. I'm pretty sure I pronounced the name wrong. It's Adelan Redon is the artist. And I think this deck, it just resonates with me because this artist in particular just kind of was misunderstood and wanted to go off and be an artist, and really I think was questioning lots of things and really had that sort of philosophical and like contemplative mind. And I was kind of like that as a young adult. And like I said, started questioning lots of things. So a lot of times I just felt sort of lonely because other teenagers weren't really questioning like their existence and questioning like the existence of God. I mean, things that like teenagers aren't necessarily contemplating, all the time. Like at least back then, at least where I grew up, so sometimes, like my first tarot deck, I mean, I was 16 or 17 and I'm like alone in my room, right? There's no one else who's has any interest in this, right? That I could really connect with. At the time, there was no internet, I didn't have, any way to connect with people outside of where I was, where I grew up. So this Lonely Dreamer tarot just reminds me of that time period. It's not to say that I was like, again, like I said, lonely or like unhappy. I was generally like, I'm pretty happy. Adolescence is full of angst anyway. So, we have that going on. But this is just where I started to really question lots of. And so it felt lonely because I didn't have anyone else to pose these questions to. And so when I started thinking about things like religion and spirituality, and I read like Holy Blood, Holy Grail, and I really started thinking about me as a woman, as a girl, as a female, as, and like, what does that mean? And like, how come the Catholic Church sort of like relegates women? And these are the things that I started thinking about. And again, no one else was. They were just kind of going along. They'd go to church with their parents, they'd make confirmation, and they'd do all these things. And there wasn't really much questioning, but to me, like this High Priestess card in particular, to me, it reminds me almost of a nun. Like it almost has that with the veil and the book, and like in her face, I see the questions. I see a question there, sort of like, what am I pledging myself to? Like what, where do I fit in this, in this relationship? Do I just am I just led by blind faith? So I think that's why this deck really sort of, it embodies this part of my journey. And that was the part of my journey of being an adolescent and being in my early 20s, and just really started like sort of questioning everything and diving into spirituality and Wicca and really starting exploring all those things, paganism and what it meant and what I believed in my heart and my soul to be true. And it was a little isolating because my mother is very Catholic and her Catholic faith is very important to her. She never made me feel like, she wouldn't love me or accept me because of the things, but I don't think she ever understood it. And I think now she does, now that I'm older, and there's definitely an understanding there, that she just wanted me to have a connection to faith and spirituality. And of course she wanted it to be Catholicism, because that's, like I said, and her faith is very important to her, and I will never take that away from her. I honor that in her. It's one of the things I actually love and respect about my mother, is that that is her faith, and she's committed to it, and she believes in it, and she tries to live by it in a certain way. And she doesn't go blindly. Like, she has her own mind, but I think it's just it's been such an important part of her life and the things that she's had to go through. But for me, there was just so many questions for me around this time. So the Lonely Dreamer just really feels like what I was going through at that time. So that's the deck I chose. That's the second deck I chose. Another beautiful deck. Just like I said, really resonating with me for that, thinking about the roots and like the things that have made me who I am. Which my spirituality, that's so much a part of who I am and how I've grown over the years. So Lonely Dreamer. So the next one that I chose is more towards, like I said, my probably mid 30s, late 30s, the early part of my 40s. And that's the Somnia Tarot. So this deck is by Nicholas Bruno. It's very, I feel like it's been seen. It's a very popular deck. He created this deck because of his experience with sleep paralysis, in particular. Not something I suffer from, but this deck resonates with me so much. And I think part of it's because this was photographed where I live on Long Island in New York. So a lot of the places are very familiar to me, the landscapes, the geography, just everything, the wildlife, like the surroundings, they resonate with me. And during this period of my life, I came back to New York. I left for 10 or 11 years and I've returned to New York. So that's another reason why I returned to where I was born. I grew up here my whole life. I moved when I was about 25 and came back when I was about 36. So, so it's a big part of my life. And there was a lot of decisions that went into coming back here. But this deck too, it's very dark, and it definitely reminds me of a darker period. Everyone is, you don't see any faces in this deck. And this deck reminds me of a time in my life when I felt like I didn't know who I was. I definitely had lost myself within a particular relationship, with particular roles I had taken on at this time. I really felt like I had lost who I was. Like there was a spark in me that had just gone out. It was like that feeling. And I was in a very toxic relationship, a very toxic marriage, and it was very difficult, and I played my part in that. But this is the time of my life that I felt I just didn't know who I was. I just, like these figures who are cloaked and their faces, and almost like the way this creator talks about suffering from sleep paralysis, I felt like I was paralyzed, except I wasn't asleep. I felt like I was paralyzed in my waking life. I felt paralyzed. I felt like I couldn't move forward, like I was trapped by the decisions and my choices I made, and that there was no way out of that. And so this deck it reminds me of sort of going through that journey of that sort of like that dark night of the soul we talk about. This deck, the entire deck to me feels like a dark night of the soul. It feels like entering it and going through it and then being in it and being confused and blindfolded and not knowing where you're going. And again, not feeling like yourself, not knowing who you are, not remembering, who you are, losing your entire self. And that's what this deck represents for me. And I absolutely love it for that, because it's really made me face feelings and emotions tied to all of that. And that journey through it, And thankfully I came out the other side. I came out, of it, but it was just such a piece of what's made me who I am today, and has brought up so many things for me. And like I said, just because of that paralysis type energy that this deck was created off of, it just reminds me of being paralyzed, like I said, in my waking life. So this deck is just, it's such a good one. And when I first got it, I used it so much. It's more than just a deck for shadow work. I feel like any deck could be a deck for shadow work, because what are your shadows? Like, everyone has different, right? Everyone's shadows are different. So it's really going to be, what are your shadows? And to me, this deck really mirrors that shadow aspect of me and the things in my life that have created, the shadow in me and where that is. And so I feel like it's very personal, your shadows, and like a shadow work deck, it's going to be really personal to you and what your shadows are. So this one really resonates with me for this part of my life. And I love this Tower card. When I first got the deck and I saw this card, I think I almost started crying, because I just felt this, so where I had been, I felt this so hard, in my soul. So this deck has really been, like I said, the fact that it was photographed here, that's just another connection, that I have. And again, that time of my life, I thought this deck was so appropriate for that time of my life, because I returned to New York, and it was during a very turbulent period, and that continued. And so this is the perfect deck for that. Okay, so now we're out of let's move out of the Dark Night of the Soul and talk about the deck that brought me back to myself in a way, and brought me back to tarot, which I had put down, I felt, for so long, because I was dealing with so much. I just didn't even have the energy or time to, I would do it once in a while, but it was not the practice it is now. It's not the relationship I have with it now. So this deck really brought me back to myself and that piece of me that was connected to tarot, and that's the Light Seers Tarot. And I feel like people either love or hate this deck, or they just don't resonate with it. Not hate's a strong word. Maybe not hate it, but it just doesn't resonate with them. But to me, this deck is like I said, what brought me back to myself and to tarot. It's the first new tarot deck I bought in the longest time. I hadn't purchased a new deck. So this is the mass market edition. It's by Chris Ann, and it's by Hay House, the mass market. I don't know what I'm doing. Okay. So this deck, like I said, was the first, look, the world. This deck was the first deck I bought, new deck I bought. I think it was 2019 or so. First new deck I had bought in the longest time. And then when I got it, I just used it. I used the crap out of it. I used it all through the pandemic, because this was the deck that like I said, brought me back to my tarot practice and back to myself. And to me, it just has it's like this whole deck to me feels like illumination and light, right? It's called the Light Seers. So of course it's going to feel like light, but this entire deck to me feels like something, it feels like being illuminated. And that's that feeling of coming back to myself and finding that like I talk about that spark that went out, I couldn't find it. And this is like that finding it, reaching in there and finding it again. So to me, even the challenging cards in this deck, the ones that we think of as more challenging or filled with conflict, to me, they're just filled with light, this light energy and this illumination. And I will always love this deck. It will always hold a special place for me because of the time in my life when it came to me. And again, like I said, it got me back on that path, and back to knowing who I am and knowing myself again and finding that part of myself that I thought I had lost. So the Light Seers is definitely that, the deck, it, like I said, around 2019. So I was definitely in my 40s, into my early 40s. And while this deck may feel like it's young, right? It sort of reads a little younger, the people in it. And I get that. It's definitely modern, right? It's more modern. This is, but this is really the first, I think, modern tarot deck like I ever had, I'm pretty sure. Everyday Witch, I'm trying to think when I got Everyday Witch. That might have been before this, but this one was definitely one of the first modern type, decks that I bought. And it just, I just was blown away by it. And like I said, it got me excited about taking the cards out again. It made me want to get back into this tarot practice. I think it has a lot of soul, I think, this deck, and a lot of depth, and I connected with it immediately. So Lightseers, again, my roots, in bringing me back to my roots, and just bringing me back to that wild soul like feeling, and and remembering who I was and remembering who I am, and knowing that I never lost it and it was there, right? That spark, it was there the whole time. I thought I had lost it, but I didn't. It was there the whole time. So that's the Lightseers. So that is the fourth deck I chose based on my roots. And so that is the next step of my journey, was the Lightseers. And so now we come to now, right? Who am I now? And what's a deck that embodies me now? And that's really hard because I think there's a few, but the one that I'm currently obsessed with, and so I was like, this is coming into the rotation for April because it was going to anyway, is the Upside Down Circle of Doors Tarot. This deck is absolutely amazing. It is raw, and it is primal, and it is embodied feminine energy. The cards are absolutely huge. I actually like it like this. Normally I wouldn't, but the cardstock is such a nice cardstock. It's gilded. This was created by Anne Stabley and Jill Sutherland. It was originally an art installation out in California. But it is absolutely stunning. It is a stunning deck. And to me, embodies me where I am now. Like the level of my spirituality and where that has gone, and how I've grown, and how I've connected with like ancestral energy and the goddess energy that I connect with on a spiritual basis. My spirituality is based on this. To me is that raw, very primal and very real and authentic, and it just feels like authenticity, and it feels like power, and it feels like acknowledgement, and it feels like compassion, and it feels like transformation. All of it. It feels like all of it. That's this deck embodies, and it's kind of all of the things that I've been through my entire life up until now. It's all in one. It's it's everything. It's all of those steps. It's all of these periods of time. It's all these roots that have made me who I am, and I feel like has culminated in this deck for me, and where I am right now. This feels just very me, and my energy now, and where I am, and like the lessons I've learned. So it feels like lessons. It feels clarity. It feels like clarity. It feels like positive energy. It feels like shadow. It feels like light. It feels like all of it. Like I said, everything that just embodies like myself, me and my authenticity, and like being authentic. So I absolutely love it. And I just feel so grateful to have it and be able to work with it. And it's going to be one that I work with quite a bit this month of April. And I feel like continuing, I feel like this is going to come in. And so as part of my empowered self and where I am feeling like I am being empowered, there's 2 oracle decks that I am going to be using with this, and ones that I'm absolutely loving. And that's the Outlaw Oracle, this deck, and this deck. Holy crap. This is by Hilary Banks Self. It is a 44 card deck. It is based on, well, inspired by the outlaw country music movement, which is so interesting. And I love how the guidebook has songs for each card, song suggestions for upright and reversals, which I now have a playlist, of course, an Outlaw Oracle playlist, based on the suggestions. And I love it. It's just another layer. I have such an eclectic taste in music. I listen to everything and anything. And so I love now that I have this to go with it. But so these are the backs. So this is the Outlaw Oracle. And like I said, these two decks together have been like, I don't know, they love each other's energy. They definitely are feeding off of each other. Obviously, this deck features a lot of, the photos were taken in California. They were taken in Oklahoma. They were taken in Texas. They were taken in lots of different places, but it definitely has more of like, sort of like a desert country, obviously vibe. But I'm just loving these two together. Look at this, Goddess, right? Which is the Empress, and Monarch, transformation and rebirth. So this is like giving me death card vibes, the transformation and rebirth. But just like, I just adore these together. Something about the energy. Again, it doesn't have to be about aesthetics, but I think it's just the general feeling. This deck feels like this Circle of Doors tarot feels like, like not taking any shit, like I know who I am type of energy. And that's the Outlaw Oracle 100%, right? It's being that outlander, that, you know what I mean? The outlier, like the person who's not doing what everyone else is doing, or doesn't care what anyone thinks about what they're doing, is just doing what they want to do. And whiskey, hell yeah, I love a good whiskey. I love to just sip on a good whiskey. Whiskey neat, yeah. And this, it's so good together. So the Outlaw Oracle and the Circle of Doors, like, definitely feels like me right now. I'm feeling this energy. Evil Eye. I love the keywords in this, and they do have a keyword and then like other like expandable words here, which is great, I think. I love the guidebook though, because the guidebook has the great thing about the Outlaw Oracle is it's called a straight shot. So if you just want, like, if you don't like to read, if you're not one that's going to go and like read and dive into the guidebook, there's a straight shot with a little whiskey, the whiskey emoji, which I like love. So like for roadside motel, it says stability, security, home for the night. The straight shot is, I'm going to relax for a bit. I've done enough for now. So if you just want like a quick, like one sentence, like, expansion on what the card is. And look, we have Coven, the Three of Cups, and Buffalo, honor, abundance, generosity. Like honor, abundance, generosity. Oh my God, I just love it. I'm like way too excited about this. Way too excited about this pairing together, but it's just awesome. Like, how could I not be excited? So that's the Outlaw Oracle that I'm going to pair with the Circle of Doors because I love it. And the other one, because this video is very long, so I need to wrap it up. The other oracle is the Old Ways Magic Oracle by Naomi Cornock. This is the new expanded version. So this is the expanded version. So there's more cards. She added additional cards to this deck, which I love. I adore that there's more cards now in this deck because I know it was like, I think it was like 30 something before. And I think now there's like 50 or so. Can we just talk about how like they're almost the same size? They're a little bit larger, but they're almost the same size. But this is another one that even though this is a more modern, take, because it's photos, sort of superimposed and some collage. And the artwork is very different, but to me, it really speaks to that primal energy and how that's lasted, right? That hasn't gone anywhere. It's still there. And that's sort of how I feel about it. I feel like these old ways, they're still here. They're alive and well, and they're living, you know, through the people who are keeping them alive. So like, look at this one. Mega of Cups poet and the cauldron. Like, holy crap. Is it just me? It could just be me. Oh, protection. I love bears. So here we have the Maiden of Keys, Seeker, and Protection. I absolutely love this card. So glad that came up. Oh my God, and the wolves. So the Old Ways Magic Oracle is absolutely gorgeous. And these two together, like the size of the cards, the card stock, this is like linen. The Old Ways Magic is more linen-y. This is more like matte, but they're very similar in terms of like thickness. Oh, look at this. Ace of Cups, Ecstasy, and Renew. Is that even in frame? I'm like too busy looking at the cards, like, and going crazy over them to like make sure that they're actually in the frame of the camera. So that's cool. Ooh, look at the Universe and Connect. Okay. I'll just be here all day flipping these cards over because I like it. This is like making me very happy. So that's the Old Ways Magic Oracle, the new expanded version by Naomi Kornock, with the Circle of Doors, which, you know, I think is just a fabulous deck. It's just amazing. It's so gorgeous. So there we have it. My roots. The roots of who I am. Where I've been. Right? Where I've been. Where I'm going. These decks to me feel like me and the journey I've been on, and just reflect, you know, everything that's made me who I am and where I am now. So I would love to hear what you're planning on using for April. So please let me know in the comments. I'll be looking out for your own video if you choose to do one on and participate in April's Capsule Cards and Coziness. Again, that's sponsored and hosted by Tara from Tara is Cozy and Kelsey at Huga Tarot. Again, I will link everything in the description box so you can find their channels, find the videos, and let me know what you'll be using for April, what you used in March, and anything else that you want to let me know about. I love connecting with all of you. If you haven't, please consider subscribing to my channel and like this video and share it if you would. That would be so wonderful. And I'll see you all in the next video. Bye.